What I wanted to start off with is essentially this is not going to come as a surprise. Clearly, we are in the midst of an incredible transformation that's happening in the infrastructure landscape, and primarily driven by trends of 5G and edge computing, where we have workloads moving closer and closer to the end user. Yet we have businesses that have assets that are spread across traditional on-prem, public cloud, multi-cloud environments, and the edge. In addition, all of these are underpinned by a significant explosion of network traffic, whether that's device to device, user to device, machine to machine, or even mobile data traffic. And all of them added with rich media content. So fundamentally, it's unrelenting network traffic growth. Networking has always played a strategic role in delivering workload, application, performance, all of these across the generations. I mean, we've been through a number of inflection points, as you all very well know. The one big change that's happening now, as I just said, is that earlier the network used to be connecting various silos. Typically when people talk about the networking industry solutions as well, you end up talking about the data center or the backbone or the edge, because historically they've been developed as independent entities, including the networking solutions associated with them. But what's happening now, as we've gone through these generations, is that with assets increasingly spread across all of these places, compute, applications, and data spread across all of these environments, and a lot of any-to-any connectivity also. So basically, very hyper-distributed and hyper-connected, yet hyper-connected. You essentially have to rethink and reimagine how you deploy infrastructure. So as we go through that journey, one of the key things I wanted to point out is that with those assets spread across all of these places, it doesn't mean that businesses are looking at changing their model of how they expect their infrastructure to respond to their needs, which is business continuity is going to be key. And I want to address why we decided to start from first principles. One of the key things I wanted to point out also is, having come from some of the incumbent players in this space, one of the biggest challenges we've seen is that they were all built from silos across, as I was mentioning earlier, points in the network. And essentially customers told us, have been across enterprise and providers, by the way, that we no longer does this notion of a false boundary between a campus environment. If you want a PoE-based software on top of ArcOS, we actually have a customer that's working on that's asked for it, and that's currently under trials as well. If you want to deploy ArcOS as a top of rack in the data center, you can do that. And the reason why if you want to deploy it as a edge router or a backbone router with the ability to download the full internet routing table in under a minute, then essentially you're actually way under a minute. You need first principles based software, because the current open source based routing software cannot scale and address all of these environments. When we say scale, we're talking about scale up and scale out of all kinds of use cases. So essentially, fundamentally, one of the philosophies that we kind of talk out here internally as well as a guiding principle is kind of aptly captured by Einstein's famous quote, which is, no problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it. So essentially, if every startup out there that's looking at coming out as an alternative to the incumbents uses Quagga FRR and an architecture that glues a number of elements of control plane together with it, it ends up solving specific points in the network solutions. That's why Arrcus was the first and is still the first open networking software company that actually spans the entire gamut of switching, routing, virtual, container, and cloud-based solutions. And I say all of this with all the humility, because it's important, because we have customers across all of these environments, and it's not been done before by open networking companies. We're not talking about the incumbents. Even at the incumbents, you have different operating systems trying to address each of these use cases. I want to point out that where the industry is actually headed is that you have micro data centers sitting at the edge. You have traditional on-prem completely changing. They've already become class-based designs. You have multi-cloud infrastructure, so the ability to seamlessly connect onto multi-cloud environments. Essentially, customers are saying you need to address these tenets. And the items on the right are the key networking enablers, all software-driven. And we already talked a lot about SR, but SR is a demo and a specific point for today's, the demo today was a specific example of how we show end-to-end for the 5G edge access infrastructure use case. But Arrcus supports the complete set of software from IP, V4, V6, MPLS, VXLAN, VPN, all of those. So, and I'll come to that shortly. Why does it matter? It matters because ultimately what's being asked by customers is, hey, complexity is only increasing. My IT teams and OT teams are converging at various points of the network that we didn't think of before. Fundamentally, they want a simple, scalable, and seamless infrastructure that starts first and foremost by using white box economics, not by being forced to use custom silicon. So if you go into other kinds of offerings out there, you have to use some custom silicon options to deploy it in a certain part of the network. That's fundamentally holding back innovation, holding back the cost points from going down. And if you can do that by providing a much more simplified routing-based solutions, whether it's in the data center, whether it's in the backbone or at the edge, and if you have an ability to actually provide intelligent policy in a centralized manner and distributed enforcement, standards-based APIs, you essentially are taking that step towards a simple, scalable, and seamless network infrastructure. And white box merchant silicon is just one of the pieces. SR is the data plane, one of the components, but it's not the only one. You have V6, you have MPLS, all of these environments. But fundamentally, the goal is to simplify infrastructure as they distribute. If you look at what's happening in the market from a silicon perspective quickly, you had the first generation, it was custom silicon, custom hardware, closed OS. Then you had a generation where you've seen success from specifically players, other second tier incumbents that have come in and taken a good chunk of the data center market is the merchant silicon, but still with custom hardware and closed OS. That still does not address the ability to go across any kind of environment using any hardware ODM, or at least a multitude of hardware ODMs as options, providing the same kind of scalability and the seamless nature of deployment. That's where the next phase is. We believe that the open integration is the approach. And whether the underlying distribution is ONL or whether it is a Sonic-based solution, we don't look at Sonic. I think Jeremy asked this question. We don't look at Sonic as competition at all. Actually, we look at them as another option of running the Arrcus software on it as well. So essentially, by having a very flexible, lean, composable software, you actually can have the ability to deploy in multiple environments.
So I have a question on your networking 3.0 point there about running on any hardware and stuff like that. You know, what are your concerns? I see Broadcom listed, and Broadcom has a bit of a history with their SDK and with open networking and ripping that out. You know, as an open networking company, what do you plan to do in that scenario? And, you know, how do you prevent that is basically my question. And, you know, seeing that happen with Broadcom, I think kind of made me go, how open is open networking? So maybe that's a really philosophical question, but.
Are you referring to the turning off of SDK for certain vendors by Broadcom? Yeah. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so I mean, as I've mentioned right there, right? So essentially, right now we're almost in the golden era of network innovation. Essentially, in the processor and the silicon layer, there are a number of options out there. We go by what our customers have asked for. if our customers have, and Broadcom is the market leader here, the customers where they've asked for a routing-based solution that's based on Broadcom, we go with that. And essentially, if customers ask for something else, we will be led by the customer to different options. But fundamentally, the most important point I want to highlight there is that we spent the initial conception years building an abstraction layer that allows us to do that very fast. In fact, the reason why the rapid porting from between switching and routing did not happen prior to Arrcus at such a in such a manner, or between switching silicon and the routing silicon in the open networking industry, is because that abstraction layer was not built to scale out in such a manner. And so fundamentally, ArcOS has been built to be able to work in any kind of environment. In fact, not just silicon environments underneath, but networking silicon environments, but also smart NIC, smart server environments as well. And the point I was making about the hardware is between Network 2.0 and 3.0 is also that we have a great set of partnerships with a host of ODMs. Remember, as people go into the open networking paradigm, as in not people, the businesses, they also have their choice of ODMs or hardware vendors that they partner with. And we are flexible there because of the same reasons. And so that is essentially providing that extra layer of economic benefits to that customer. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it makes sense. And I appreciate you mentioning that you have, an abstraction layer so that the hardware doesn't matter as much to you, right? But yeah. I still have to go back to my point a little bit and say, okay, but if Broadcom takes away your SDK access, then it doesn't matter if you have an abstraction layer because I have to rip out hardware now. And that's my question is the abstraction layer can't, replace that hardware, right? And so that's kind of what I'm getting at with this open networking and with networking 3.0 is, how as a customer do I have confidence that that's not going to happen to me?
And so from our vantage point as the software provider, right, our job is to make the transition for whatever reasons. It doesn't have to be like the example that's quoted there of somebody taking off the SDK. It could also be that customers decide that they want to swap out a particular hardware with a particular silicon with another hardware of similar form factor with another silicon. Our job is to be able to provide that seamless transition as a software vendor. And we, as I said earlier, customers have said clearly that they are very, very focused on adopting white box economics with merchant silicon. And our job is to make it easy for them, both northbound and southbound. Okay. I'll quickly, ultimately, we probably won't get much time to talk about this, but fundamentally what we're driving towards is a world where you have micro data centers across, whether it's an enterprise edge, mobile edge, industrial edge, a whole different set of edge kind of environments. You have your traditional data center environments, you have the multi-cloud solutions. The ability to provide a end-to-end common platform, single platform, single architecture that spans all of this helps in significantly simplifying transport networks. And what we posit to the world is that you can do that with fundamentals that have been built with clear abstractions that allow you to go underneath with any kind of environment that we just talked about. And if you have those principles set properly, you can integrate either with our control-based environments or with frameworks that exist or proprietary systems. And that's how you start going towards an environment that's network as a service. So I just want to quickly address, for folks for whom it's the first time you've seen Arrcus or you've heard about Arrcus or you're seeing us present. Fundamentally, I think by now we've kind of drilled it a few times already, but ArcOS is our software, and it is built from first principles, and it is built to be able to address all of the use cases from left to right. We started out from the left. When we started out as a data center software solution provider because that's where our customers were. Then we rapidly moved into service provider environments in the backbone and the edge, where they wanted the ability to move from custom silicon, which arguably has been hampering them with a number of issues over the years, to merchant silicon based routers. And then we had customers who said, look, I have these big chassis that we want to build, we want to go away from, because they're inefficient, they're siloed, they're brittle. We have to keep upgrading them generation on generation. It's very tedious. So can you help us build out a virtualized distributed routing infrastructure that looks like a class? But it's a distributed router chassis. And so essentially we launched what is known as the virtualized distributed router. And fundamentally the control plane moves out of those the boxes, because now they're all fixed boxes, and essentially they run on a server outside. We also announced customers for multi-cloud networking use cases. Because we've written our own software from first principles, we're able to repurpose it in a virtualized, containerized manner to be able to address hybrid cloud use cases as well as multi-cloud region use cases as well. And for all of these, we have ArcIQ that acts as the cognitive insights, deep visibility and analytics platform. So the vision and the approach that we've taken is providing simple, scalable, seamless experiences across on-prem, legacy on-prem, edge, and multi-cloud environments. And it's never been done before, at least the way we have provided it, without causing disruption of existing operator models at scale. It's not been done. So fundamentally, providing that at the lowest TCO is what Arrcus's mission has been. I just want to pause here for a second. Keyur, do you want to address anything about ArcOS here, or I can quickly highlight the points again?
Sure, I can go after that. I think this also dovetails back into the question you had asked Jeremy earlier as to what is our differentiator, right? What does the networks want when they look for the product? They want newer switches in terms of speeds and feeds, newer routers for the same thing, scalable routers for the same thing, automation, and automation, massive scale. If you look at routing world, networks are growing, control plane 30% year over year. VPNs are growing, your internet route tables are growing, IPv6 is on the rise. How do you sort of take all this and convert into a router at scale? This is what we are after. We've designed control plane, like I said earlier, from first principles, that is designed to scale out. Net result, obviously, is faster convergence. You've just seen an automation demo that gets you to lots and lots of automation, be it through orchestration level that Adi showed or programmatic APIs that we support, right? Very microservices based architecture, which means on a fixed form factor, you can just get away with upgrading control plane. The downside on your router is very minimal. Now you can actually operationalize features like non-stop forwarding, which we were never able to do it on legacy routers. So that is how I would summarize the differentiating aspect, with the last point that we enable merchant silicon at scale, any type of silicon.
I also want to add that we are deployed in a number of enterprise and provider environments, and those are very big, leading Fortune 500 companies, in some cases Fortune 20 companies as well, and all of the reason I mention those is because it addresses the point of scale. These are environments that span data centers, they span, as I said, the edge, but there are small as well as big environments. Even the use case that was mentioned earlier, with where we integrate with proprietary provisioning systems, it's massive in thousands of switches. And so we want to keep as much of a flexible environment northbound from here to be able to integrate into open provisioning framework systems, so that our customers will find it easy to deploy. The benefit of actually being able to deploy across the broadest range of state-of-art silicon is that switching and routing, as you can see, is that you essentially can address a number of use cases. We've been saying this verbally so far, but I want to show it pictorially as well. IP class in hyperscale OTT environments, EVPN, VXLAN deployed, edge routing, as I've said before, VDR, and hybrid cloud, multi-cloud use cases as well, across the entire spectrum. And there are touch points as well across these as well. So many times there's a combination of use cases as well. So why are customers choosing Arrcus? If I had to summarize, basically it's performance and scale, which comes from our first principles based approach, the operational velocity that they get because we've always believed in open standards, integration into either their systems or standard provisioning frameworks. Quality of the software because it's lean, microservices based, doesn't have a lot of the legacy bloat or any of the legacy layer 2 proprietary software. Routing centric leads to lower TCO, significantly lower TCO. And that's been our customers' experience across all of these 5 examples. I don't want to read through each of them, but they're big environments and wide ranged variety of environments as well. I'll skip this slide, but the point is that we enable massive flexibility, including varying NCAPs on the access side, connecting back to different NCAPs or control plane solutions on the backend side as well, the backbone side as well.
This is Jeremy. Just a quick question on that. Do you guys support multicast?
We do not support multicast today, and I'm assuming you're talking about, for example, in the EVPN case, we support head-end replication. So essentially, we replace the multicast underlay requirements with head-end replication, and it scales.
No, that wasn't the use case I was referring to, but
talking about PIM. So actually, it'd be interesting.
Yeah,
I can work with you offline.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so fundamentally from a control plane perspective, we do not support multicast. The use cases that our customers have pushed us towards. I mean, we all have come from environments where complex multicast use cases and handoffs and interdependencies exist. So we've been driven by our customers. So customers haven't really pushed multicast in many of these use cases, but it's something that's on the roadmap based on requirements. I already talked about VDR, but the point is distributed router chassis. We can the software, as I said, is you can deploy it as individual chassis grouped as a class or as a distributed chassis where you take the control plane out of the modular chassis, which sits in a supervisor or an RSP, and you put it on a server. So essentially, that's something that we support. We launched it last year. We have customers trialing it. It's been an amazing feedback that we've had. And so that's one of those use cases where we see customers kind of getting familiar with the ability to build out their routing backbones with class kind of environments as well. There's just a couple of slides more, so bear with me. I want to point out that we spent some time talking about SRv6 and SRMPLS. Essentially, we're interoperability partners with Cisco. Cisco did this test. Thanks to Jacob Horn there, which shows how we were able to integrate in an environment that was all IPv6. So it's all standards based. We also interop with a number of our peers in the industry, Juniper, Arista, Nokia, at last year's EANTC across EVPN VXLAN, a number of use cases, right? Flow spec use cases for DDoS mitigation use environments, routing and switching as well. In addition to containerized route reflector use cases. So I can share a lot of these offline for folks interested. Please reach out to me, Murali at murali@arcus.com. Of course, it's there on Network Field Day links as well. But all standards-based. We really, really believe in standards-based approach to all our offerings. This is an important point I want to leave. Sorry.
So real quick, speaking of standards-based, and you mentioned IPv6. From a management standpoint, can you support IPv6 only for management? I know that sometimes dual stack works great, but IPv6 only can get a little hairy.
Yes, absolutely.
We have actually gone through evaluation phase and are close to deployment with a customer that's doing it that way.
Yeah, IPv6 only and designed to scale again.
I really want to, there's just one more slide after this, but I just want to, this is an important point I want to highlight. A lot of the open networking solutions out there, I mean, one of the things that people don't, clearly one of the challenges has been supply chain. When we said we want to move from networking 2.0 to 3.0, we obviously have to have a great partnership with a range of ODM providers. These are our partners. We're working on partnerships plans with others as well, but these are our key partners across customer base. We are again driven a lot by customers. Why does it matter? Fundamentally, it allows us to build a strategic supply base. It allows us to diversify, especially in an environment where certain semiconductor environments might be constrained or certain hardware environments might be constrained. You have the option of or ability to pivot to another secondary option as well. That flexibility is time and money for customers. And yeah, so this diversification is a key part of our differentiator for those 5 bullet points on the right hand side: quality, sourcing, quality alignment, cost, and delivery. We provide 24/7, 365 tax support. We have a great set of, if I may say so myself, online documentation and guides. We have automation libraries. We provide we have a lot of videos that helps give you more insights into Arrcus. We of course have all of the fundamental baseline, table stakes, requirements, online resources, support portals, etc. That goes into providing what we call Arrcus Care. And that is one of the key differentiators that customers have told us that they value, and we are putting a lot of focus in that area as well. That's it from our side. Arrcus is about Arrcus anywhere, any service, anytime, anywhere, whether that's your on-prem data center campus environments, multi-cloud, or the edge for both enterprises as well as CSPs.